Let's loom knit a twisted headband. This is a beautiful, nice, soft headband that fits any size. It's perfect as a project for a beginner using this basic loom from KB Looms. I can't wait to show you how to make this today here on GoodKnit Kisses.
Welcome to GoodKnit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches.
To get the written pattern on the twisted headband, as well as details on the loom and the yarn used, please see our video link down below. Down in the description is a link to our blog, as well as a right and left-handed video tutorial link for you. I do record the videos right-handed, but we flip it for the left-handed people, and it works out really well, so click on that. Let's jump into the supplies, but again, for more information or if you missed it, go to our website for all the details. We're working with a medium 4 or worsted weight yarn. This particular yarn, all the details are on the website, but I'm using Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek. It's a low pill fiber. This is color purple, and then this one is color hot pink. You're going to need a small gauge loom for double knitting with at least 9 pairs of pegs. This is a small gauge loom, but it's kind of on the upper scale of that. So if you're measuring center peg to center peg, this one actually measures 7/16. It's 1/16 shy of a ½ inch. So it's just below being in the regular gauge category. You can use a small gauge as well. You just might want to add on an extra pair of pegs. So we're working with 9 pairs of pegs on this project, but you can add it for more width. This project is about 3.5 inches wide, and we will customize it to the size of your head. So let's go into the details on notions. So you're going to need a measuring tape, and that is for measuring the circumference of the person that you were making this headband for. I recommend just measuring your head. Make a note, like write down what that number is, and you're going to subtract 2 inches, and that is the length to which you are going to knit. So that's just a quick heads up. That's what you're going to do. So if you're making it for a child, you want to measure around their head, and it's going to fit around like this. Okay, so this is the area that you're going to measure, right? So you're going to measure all the way around here. My head is 23.5 inches, so I knit to 21.5 inches. You decide for you. All right, so the other notions you're going to need besides a tape measure is your loom tool, a tapestry needle, scissors, and then you'll want a crochet hook and a piece of contrasting scrap yarn. I just have a piece about this big, and I'm going to be using it because it's a contrasting color to what I'm going to use. I'm going to be using this purple, and I will be able to see it later. And we're going to need the crochet hook for our bind off or cast off, and we're also going to need it for finishing this anchor yarn. So we will do everything start to finish in this. This is a complete loom along video tutorial. All right, let's dive right into the cast on. Okay, so we're ready to begin our cast on, and the main stitch pattern here is actually called the duplicate zigzag pattern. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. The cast on is going to be exactly the same way as the main stitch pattern. So once you learn this, you'll be able to do the rest of it easy peasy. So we're going to make a slip knot, make it however you like. I wrap it around my finger twice, take the back loop over the front once, and then do it one more time over the tip of my finger and pull it. And that is the slip knot. I'm going to go ahead and lay the tail on the inside, and I'm just going to come a couple of stitches in, give myself some space and place it, and go ahead and just tighten that up. Okay. All right, we're going to be working in pairs of pegs. We're going to go from the upper board to the lower board. So I'm on the peg 1 here. This is what I'm calling peg 1 because I've got the slip knot there. We're going to go straight down and around the outside of our first peg, and then we're going to be going in this direction here. So we're going to go around the first peg and up to the second peg and around the second peg and down to the lower board and around the second peg here. So we're working in pairs. We're going up and around, down and around. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9 pairs of pegs, and then we want to lay an anchor yarn, and this will be used later on. when you're casting on and double knitting, a lot of times that end is really loose, and this is going to help us later on in finishing. So I'm going to put my yarn kind of around these pegs here and then set it down and grab my anchor yarn. And if you need this tutorial slowed down, just use the gear button or whatever. There's some functions in the YouTube app that let you change the playback speed, so you can slow it down or speed it up. All right, grab your anchor yarn, and we're going to put the two ends down through our loom here. And if you had this pushed over too much, you can just let it lay here until you've got enough knitting and then pull it down. Okay, we're going to leave the anchor yarn on the whole time though, so don't pull it out. All right. Okay, so I've got that in there, push my knitting down, and now we're going to wrap coming back. We're going to slip the first stitch. That means we're just not going to work the first stitch. So our first stitch now is here, and you can actually take your loom, and it's actually easier, I think, to just turn it over, and we just begin again, same way. So if this was our peg 1 before, we're going to go down around this peg 2, or peg 1 on the lower board, and then come up to peg 2 and come down to peg 2, and you see that it's matching the line from before. Okay, there's no crossing of the lines. Okay, so they're not crisscrossing, and they're not twisting, they're not doing anything like that. Like, you don't want to twist like this. Okay, so you just keep going until you have all 9. All right, and now pull this here and hold on to it. I just kind of hold it back here, and I'm going to knit over, bottom over the top, the first stitch, and that will lock that in, and go ahead and work across this whole row. Sometimes when you have a wide panel of this, you might like work from left to right to the middle and right to left in the middle. It doesn't really matter on something narrow like this, but it can change the tension. So now we just turn it over and go ahead and knit over, and you'll notice that you only have one loop on this peg, and that's because it was slipped, and that's okay. So we're just knitting over all of the pegs that have 2 stitches or 2 loops. Okay, if you notice when I flip it over, I push down, and so these loops, if they're loose, they won't start falling off, but you can always push them down with your finger or thumb and get ready. So now that I flip this over, when I turn it around like that, it means that my slip knot or my slip stitch is going to be in the correct position to continue. So you're just going to repeat that same thing you did on cast on. Row 1 is just slipping that first peg, going to the next peg, going around peg 2, and just continue going all the way down. So you only have 2 loops on all pegs except for 1. So just only have 1 loop on peg 1 and continue, and you just work all of your pegs, knit over until you have your desired length. So we're going to jump to that part of the video, and you're going to see this with a lot of length for our headband. All right, pause your video. I will see you there. So you've knit to about your desired length, and we're going to take our measuring tape. Again, you would have wanted to measure around the circumference of your head like this, or wherever you would be putting the headband on yourself or the person you're making it for, or you can use general references, generic references, but I would definitely measure your head at least and get the headband that size so you can try it on. And then you're going to take out 2 inches. So you're going to push your knitting all the way down to the bottom here and hold the tape measure up where it hits the 0. Okay, and then you're just going to hold this up and measure it and see where it falls, and you want to be 2 inches shy of whatever your measured distance around your head is. Before you actually do the measurement, just kind of gently tug on your work and ease out the tension and hold it vertically, so where the knitting is just hanging down loosely, and that way you get a more accurate measurement. You can take this off of the loom with some scrap yarn and measure it that way, but this is perfectly fine for this particular kind of project. So no worries, go ahead and do that. If you do have too many inches, just kind of measure how many stitches per inch you get in a row. and you want to measure and see how many rows you might need to take off from here before you start just ripping back a whole bunch. The way that you would do that is you would just simply unknit those stitches one at a time, go all the way down, and then pull out that row, and then you can do it again if you needed to. So I'm at my part here, so let's jump on to the next part of casting off your stitches. So we're going to cast off or bind off our stitches. We're going to be slipping the stitches across using a crochet hook. I find that's easier to do. You can also use your knitting tool and move the stitches over and then knit off, but I like to use a crochet hook. You want one that's going to fit in between your pegs easier in your stitches. It doesn't really matter, but I am using a 4.5 millimeter in this sample here. It's just the one I grabbed and it happened to work. It's really no big deal. So what I want to do is turn this around to where my dominant hand can work in the direction that I'm happy with doing. So the working yarn is going to be at the opposite side where I start. So working yarn is going to be over here. You see it's on this upper board up here. Okay, it's coming from this top peg. So we're going to go to the lower board and we're going to go to the opposite peg, and that will be our starting place. And we're going to zigzag back and forth in pairs. So we're going to start on this lower board and go to the same peg on the upper board and then move back down and work in pairs all the way down to the last stitch. So we're just going to pick this one up, all right, and then we're going to go across and pick up the next stitch across and then knit over, okay? If you aren't familiar with using crochet hook, you can just lift the bottom loop over the top loop, or the back loop over the front loop, and do that. Sometimes I just get my finger in here and I can really get in there easier. So we're gonna go into the next one, pick that loop up and slip it through. If you wanna do it like a regular crochet hook, you can take it and turn it down, and you're gonna trap in that first loop and then pull through the second loop. Okay, so pick one stitch up and turn and pull it through, okay, and go to that lower one and grab it. So you're just zigzagging back and forth, and it makes just a nice chain along the edge here. We're just slipping these stitches nice and gentle. We're not adding any yarn to this because it's already a very loose stitch. The way that this has knit up. You don't always want to slip across when you're double knitting, but in this particular project, it works out really well. I'm just going to keep going. And for those who wanted to see it, you know, maybe working with the this tool here, let me just show you. So you would just put it down here. You just pick one stitch up, put it over on the next one, and then knit over, bottom over top. Then pick the next one up and put it on and knit over, bottom over top. But I just don't think it makes as good as a look to it. So we're just gonna go back. There we go. All right. I think the chain looks better doing it this way. Like this. Okay. Here we go. So now I'm on my last stitch. We're going to pick this one up. It'll be loose, and that's okay. You can pull on it to make it tighter and slip that stitch. Oh, hang on. I think I'm not through all of this yarn. There we go. We'll make sure not split our yarn here. That'll be seen. All right, slip that through, and then you want to just pull a nice big loop here, and then go ahead and cut a nice long tail. And I've kind of marked where my tail should be and actually pulled it off, but you want to have enough for a long tail because we're going to actually sew this. And so go ahead and cut that tail and pull it through, pull your big loop through to complete finishing that. Okay, and then now we have our headband ready, And before we sew it together, we're going to finish off this end. So in the next part, you're going to need your crochet hook, and we will work at the anchor end. Okay, so we're going to finish up or clean up this anchor yarn here at the beginning of our panel. You can do this on a wider project. This is just a small sample, of course, but obviously a contrasting yarn is going to be seen really well when we do this. So if you grab the wrong kind, you could tie a knot to one end and just pull through and get a better color in there if that's easier for you. And if you used a yarn that's way too grabby, like a wool or something, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult here, so you might need to swap that out. Okay, so we're going to start at the opposite end of our tail. So this purple one here, this is our tail. So I'm going to go to the other side, and we'll go to the very first purple loop, and I'm just using crochet hook. Again, I'm just using one that kind of fits in with my size of my stitches. This is a 4.5 millimeter, but I could use a little bit larger hook if I like. So we're going to go in the first loop and then go into the second loop, and we're just avoiding that scrap yarn, and we're just going to slip the stitch. So we're lifting the back loop over the front, so pull through, and it makes a little chain. Now we're going to go to the next one, pick that stitch up, okay, lift the back loop over and chain. Okay, we're not adding any extra yarn in here. Pick the next one up and go through. So just continue going through all of these stitches until you reach the very last one. And this scrap yarn will get pulled out at the end. There we go. I need a sharper crochet hook. All right, we're on our last one. It's right by the slip knot, and go ahead and pull that on through. And now we want to grab our tail and yarn over and pull that through to finish off that last stitch. And then we just simply pull out our scrap yarn. Okay, and you can just pull on it to ease the tension. You see that it has maintained our tension here. It looks really good. And so we have a short tail here and a long tail here on this other end. We're going to sew these two pieces together, and so I recommend just leaving this short tail alone, and it's going to get woven in at the very end. It makes it easier. So grab your tapestry needle and go ahead and thread through your long tail here. All right, and now we're just gonna set that down for a moment. Go ahead and take your pieces. It doesn't matter which side is which, but I like to put in my non-dominant, well, in my dominant hand, put the short tail one, and this other hand, we're gonna put the long tail, and I make sure that the tail is towards me here. Okay, so we're going to fold these two. And by the way, this tail doesn't matter if it's on this end or this end. That part doesn't matter. So we're going to fold them together like a taco. Do you know what a taco is? They're so good. We're going to fold them together, and we're going to interlock these two. Let me show you with my hands. We're going to take them, look, imagine your hands are our two pieces, and we're just folding them and then interlacing them or locking them together. And so we're going to be sewing through all of these pieces starting on this end here. We're going to be going through this part, through here, and here. So this is what it looks like. Fold them together, and we're going to make our long tail on the outermost part. Okay, and we're going to put it at the halfway point of where this fold is, and then put the other end of this this first piece in the middle, and then fold it over so it's interlocked like that. All right, and so you have your long tail on this very first part, and then that's right in the way for you to use your dominant hand and sew on this side. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is guide our tapestry needle through this very first stitch. It's going to be probably a little bit smaller here. Just go through that whole thing. You can go ahead and pull through, or you can continue by guiding through the next stitch. Oops, let me get that tail out of the way. Okay, so we've got this part that's folded together. We want to get as close to the fold as we can. I'm just going to pick this stitch right here, go through both stitches, and then now we are at the other end of our first piece. Okay, so we want to find the very edge stitch, go up to it, very last one, go through all those stitches there, and then I'm going to continue this fold over and get to the very next stitch. Okay, we want to get the very edge. That one's probably the harder one to find. Let's just go through, pick up those top stitches there, make sure you're getting all the strands, and we're just going to completely pull through all 4 of those layers. Okay, there's that. And then I have my other strand over here. I'm just going to pull it up, whether it's here at this fold or it's here at the back, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that the tail is up to the top and out of the way. Okay, now that we've gone through and carefully got these all lined up, now you can carefully come through the very next stitch on all 3 of these, or all 4 of these layers, and go back in the opposite direction. So I went through this one before, so we're just going to go down to the next one, and then we're going to go to the next one down here. You can see where it comes out. So we're going to go to the very next stitch, same thing down here, go through the very next stitch, which is this one, and then go through this one here. So pull through. Okay. And then we're going to work our way in the other direction. So we're just going to be zigzagging back and forth for this first pass. We're actually going to go through this twice, but the second time we come through, we're actually going to do a whip stitch on the outermost stitches. So I'll show you that in a moment. Go ahead and go through all of these first and meet me at the other end. Okay, so I'm on the last edge stitches here, and I want to make sure and get this one that's at this fold. Make sure to go through the very last part. And all pieces of that, because we're on the wrong side here, and we want to make sure when we flip this over that we're not piercing through the middle of a stitch. We're splitting that yarn. Okay, so I did that one, and we're going to do this very last one. Pull through. Okay, so we can now pull this nice and snug. Okay, we're not pulling it like a drawstring, so don't pull it too hard. But now we've got our headband all sewn together, and we want to weave in these tails, but before we do, we can draw this seam together a little flatter. And how we do that is go through the opposite side. We're going to do a whip stitch, and we're going to go to the very outermost loop and just kind of smooth this down. So we're going to go through it and then pull towards us again. We're going to come to this side over here and go to the outermost loop. Okay, and come through. Right, and we're going to go to the next loop down, pull through, come to the front, grab an outermost loop, and you can actually do this one and then pick up this next one next if you like. I'm just doing one at a time. I think it's easier to see for me. Oops, I went through that. And just keep going all the way down. Let's do this. That's how I would pick up 2 at the same time. And you see how it's a much flatter look over here now? It's a little more carefully crafted. Okay, and I'm just going to come up through another strand here, and to finish it off, leave a little bit of a loop and go through that to secure it. Okay, so now I just want to come through this seam and weave in a shorter tail. Okay, so I'm in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off, and then go ahead and weave in this remaining tail. All right, it's just going to come up through one of these strands here, and you can just bury this tail right in this seam. And that's it. Go ahead and trim it and turn it this outside to the right side here. And you have a nice twisted headband. Isn't that fun? Isn't that pretty? So it's nice and soft and twisted. You have a good flat seam here. It's not hugely bumpy. It lays pretty flat. Anyway, I love it. I hope you've enjoyed making this headband today. Be sure and comment down below and let us know, and make as many as you like. They're great little presents or just to wear around town. So have a great day and happy knitting.
Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.